It was the height of the dry season in Umudike, a small village nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. The sun scorched the earth, cracking the ground and leaving a haze of dust in the air. The village was alive with the daily rhythm of life. Women pounding fufu under the shade of mango trees, children chasing each other through winding footpaths, and men gathered under the large iroko tree, discussing matters of the land. Among them was an elderly man called Okonkwo. His voice carried wisdom, and his stories were known to leave deep imprints on the hearts of those who listened. That day, as the village boys rested under the tree after a long day at the farm, Okonkwo cleared his throat and began to speak. "There was a time," he said, his eyes scanning the eager faces before him, "when the spirits of the land walked among us more freely than they do now. In those days, a man's actions were judged not only by his fellow men, but also by unseen eyes, and sometimes when a man's greed became too great, the land itself would rise against him." The boys leaned in, listening closely. Okonkwo continued. "In the neighboring village of Umuchieze, there lived a man named Obiora. He was a wealthy man, known for his vast farmlands and numerous barns filled with yams. He had acquired his wealth not through honest labor, but through cunning and deceit. Obiora was not like other men. He did not fear the gods, nor did he respect the customs of the land. One year, the drought was harsher than usual. Rivers shrank into thin, muddy streams, and the earth became so parched that even the deepest roots struggled to find water. The people of Umutieze suffered greatly. Their crops withered, their animals perished, and their children cried from hunger. But Obiora didn't suffer. His barns remained full, his granaries overflowing with yams from previous harvests. He had more than enough to share, but he refused. When desperate villagers came to him pleading for food, he turned them away. "Did I farm for you?" he would sneer. "Did you till my land? If you were wise, you would have prepared for the drought just as I did. Now leave." Obiora's greed angered the gods. That night, an old woman came to his compound. Her back was bent, her feet cracked from walking. She wore a wrapper so faded, it barely had color left. "My son," she said weakly, "please, just a handful of yams. My grandchildren have not eaten for days." Obiora scowled. "Go away, old woman. I have nothing for you." The old woman sighed, shaking her head. "You have closed your heart, Obiora. May your hands never hold what they do not deserve." Then she turned and walked into the darkness. Obiora scoffed and returned to his hut, thinking nothing of her words. That night, the wind howled like a mourning spirit. The trees outside bent as though whispering secrets. Obiora awoke to the sound of a loud rumble. He sat up, listening. Was it thunder? But there were no clouds in the sky. Then he heard it again, this time closer. A heavy, dragging sound, as if something immense was moving through the village. He grabbed the lantern and stepped outside. To his horror, he saw a trail of yams leading from his barn, winding down the path towards the forest. His precious yams, thousands of them, were rolling, crawling, and leaping as though possessed. The ground shook beneath him as more yams spilled from his barn, joining the mysterious procession. "No," he cried, running after them. "Stop! Come back!" But the yams did not stop. They moved faster, disappearing into the forest where the spirits dwelled. Obiora ran until his legs could carry him no more. He collapsed, panting, as the last of his yams vanished into the trees. The next morning, the village awoke to the news. People gathered outside Obiora's compound, whispering in hushed tones, The gods have taken his yams, they said. Obiora, once a man of wealth, was now no better than the poorest farmer. He had nothing left. His barns were empty, his lands dry, and his name became a warning to all who would hoard in times of need. And so, to this day, the elders of Umuchise tell their children, he who refuses to share with the hungry will one day find himself with nothing to eat. Okonkwo finished his story, his voice fading into the stillness of the evening. The village boys sat in silence, the weight of the tale settling upon them. Then, one of them, a boy named Nana, stood up and said, I will never hoard food when my people are hungry. Okonkwo smiled. Then you are wiser than Obiora. Remember, my children, the gods see all things. Be generous, and the land will bless you. But be greedy, and the land will take back what is not rightfully yours. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the boys stood and stretched, making their way home. And somewhere, in the rustling trees and whispering winds, it seemed as though the spirits of the land nodded in approval.